I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, Imard, Bruce Lee.
And Steve Newby.
This is the original 5 Fingers of Death right here.
But my hands are registered as lethal weapons. That means we get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
And coffee.
Yeah. I tell you what, watched a great film last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about this. It's about a kick-ass web designing Wing Chun guy. It was called IP Man. Oh shit! I'm sorry. I just got bored. Right, we better go. Okay. Let me just sort out my notes here. Right. Clear the sinuses and the throat. So, guys, welcome to the welcome, guys, to the Kung Fu Podcast. That was a good start. We're on episode 10. Celebration.
Yeah, we're celebrating with the donuts and what you got?
Coffee and sweeties. Guys, we'd just like to thank you so much for sticking with us, and I just say to everybody, I know how hard it is to listen to the old man drone on from time to time. I've had it for years, but hey, what else are you going to do? The whole world's in lockdown at the moment, so so you got to just bear with us. We are here to serve, we're here to serve. Had a nice message, Steve. Oh, sorry guys, my name's James Still, and I'm here with my teacher, Mr. Steve Newby, who is stuffing his face and when he should be saying hello.
Oh, hi. Hello from Canada.
Hello from Canada. We had a nice message the other day from an ex-student, Mr. Nick Stew from Worcester in the UK. He says, hi guys, been listening to the Kung Fu Podcast, good stuff, been keeping the cabin fever at bay. Keep up the good work. So that was a shout out to Nick there. Yeah. Hi Nick.
I like Nick. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, definitely.
He means well.
Absolutely, he means well. What's that mean?
They sent me a message when I stopped doing Worcester. I think it was John Russell sent me a message and asked me if it would be okay if he continued to do the class. And he best person for it, I guess.
Great, excellent, good stuff. So yeah, that's the shout outs done, guys. If you've got any questions or you want to shout out on the famous Kung Fu Podcast, I mean, we are an international organisation now, Steve. Do you know this? Yeah. Do you know this? We've got listeners in
Mexico.
There's one. Well, it says one person in Mexico. I don't know if that's like a bot or something.
What does that matter?
I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. Hey, we've got some people in the US, in California, Texas, Michigan, and Ohio are downloading us. I don't know. Who. I mean, God's sake. Who's in Michigan listening to us? I mean, if you are, big hello there from us at the Kung Fu Podcast. Right, we've got some stuff I want to talk about today, and I don't know where to start. I tell you what, I can open the floor to you, Steve, if you want to just kick it off with something. What do you want to talk about?
So today, this morning,
Yeah.
I was just looking through my my Facebook, and I got this advert,
Right.
and it said, "Learn self-defense in 60 minutes."
60 minutes.
Yeah, and they had, it was a great advert, a great kind of promotion,
Yeah.
and it said, you can learn how to defend yourself. Learn the basics to defending yourself in 60 minutes, and it had various little video clips of people being held up at their car with a Kalashnikov AK-47, and then people like terrorists holding them at gunpoint with a pistol, and them defending themselves and taking the pistol off them and pointing it back at them, and various other things. And 60 minutes. I really have to apologise to whoever it was, because I sent them a message back on their comments. I wrote, "My friend, you are living in cuckoo land." Cuckoo land. And I really want to discuss this this phenomena of learning martial arts, or self-defense. Let's just call it self-defense.
Right.
Not an art, but just simply how to defend yourself within 60 minutes, or for that matter, in a weekend.
Right. Yeah. I mean, go on.
The whole point of self-defense courses, okay, for me anyway, when we do courses, and we do courses over a weekend or for 3 hours or whatever, there is never a time that we would tell anybody they can learn to defend themselves.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to make them understand that they have an opportunity to learn to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And we're giving them an insight as to how that can happen.
Yeah.
We are not promising that after a day or whatever they can now defend themselves, because that is just not true.
No.
It is nothing to do with techniques, even if you can remember them after the day.
Yeah.
Because most people will forget them within the day. It is the development of your attitude, the development of your whole personality, to take on board the necessity of being evil and reactive in a bad situation. Now, if you're hit with a bad situation, someone suddenly attacks you or someone suddenly threatens you, you will revert back to your natural state. That is, if you're a nice guy or if you're a nice lady or whatever, you are going to be very fearful, and everything that you learned will just fall apart in front of you. You'll have no chance to respond. So you cannot possibly learn that in 60 minutes.
No, because like you said though, it is the mentality and that you have to adopt, or you have to understand it, and you cannot learn that. It's like absolutely, because I mean, look, I can speak from. So as I've mentioned before, I'm an ex-infantry soldier, right? So the way the army would do it, right? If you're trying to indoctrinate people with a psychology to fight, is pretty much follow orders. That's it. But and they indoctrinate you and they indoctrinate you and they indoctrinate you to the point where you don't question anything. You just act.
Go for it.
Yeah. So the thought process, you want to bypass the thought process. Now the problem is a lot of people doing martial arts, I think, certainly overthink the fighting process, either because they haven't been in a fight in their lives, or I don't know, whatever reason, but they just overcomplicate it. I think it's a bit like a light switch, right? When your back is against the wall, some people run, some people fight, and you won't know what kind of person you are until you're in that position. You can be the most docile person in the world, and suddenly, when there's no other option, you just think, sod it, I'm going in for it. Let's have a scrap.
Yeah.
But likewise, you could be a fantastic sort of martial artist or whatever, and buckle.
Yeah.
under that pressure.
It's that initial response that matters. It's not your response. It's a natural thing within you.
Yeah.
You've got to have that natural response within you.
Yeah.
Fight or flight mechanism. You have a tendency to just turn around and say, you know what, and that's it, and you just go for it. But a lot of people, as you say, the first thing they're thinking about is, oh, what's going to happen?
Yes.
If I do anything, will I get into trouble? Will it work? All these things are going through people's heads if they've got the time to confront the situation in that instance, to actually think about those things. Maybe they'll be lucky enough that it will just happen in an instant and they'll respond.
Yeah.
That's not just luck. It takes a little training to do that. Luck takes a lot of training. Yeah,
for it to happen. Do you think that the more you drill martial art, and I know we can, any martial art or whatever, the more you drill a physical movement, if you do require it, right, at a given moment, do you think it's more likely to happen if you've drilled yourself to a point where you cross over the physical to mental barrier, so to speak? What I'm saying is, how much does physicality affect your mentality if you're training a hell of a lot?
Yeah, we talked about kinesthetic perception, the fact that if some fly comes towards your eyes, or a finger or whatever comes towards your eyes, your automatic response is to blink. That isn't that you're going to say, I'm going to blink now because I can see this fly coming.
Yeah.
You just do it. That is what kinesthetic perception is.
Yeah.
And we train that with the sticky hands process and so on. So it is a matter of training to a point where you respond automatically without really thinking about it, because if you have to think about it, you're already too late.
Yeah.
So you've got no choice but to drill. But drilling must become fluid. It can't just be drill, and therefore the technique in itself, whatever you're drilling, has got to be some kind of decent technique.
Sorry.
I was going to say, like, probably 80% of martial arts can forget it. And that's just being honest. They can forget it, and this is why people have got these major issues with different martial arts, where we all complain about it, because we've seen these people who actually don't understand what reality is like. They don't perceive reality. So and that isn't just about traditional martial artists that are just trying to get on with their lives, enjoying their martial art, and maybe learning a bit of self-defense. We're also talking about people who are full of shit.
Yeah.
When they are totally, this martial art is amazing, and I'm hard, and I've been in this fight and that fight, and I've been to competitions, and I'm a champion and whatever. It doesn't make any difference. It's down to the situation and how you deal with it at that time. And a lot of people, very good competitors, you may not be able to understand or survive that kind of situation. They have a better chance, but it totally depends on their reactionary ability. And,
I was going to say, when you look at, yes, we can point the finger at a lot of traditional martial arts, and I'd definitely include a lot of kung fu's in this, because there's so many. But there's so many crap interpretation of kung fu. Of course, we've always talked about it's got to be the strategy and tactics of the style. But equally, you've got a lot of organisations and groups who will sell you the bill of goods that we're the reality, we're where reality happens, and we'll teach you this and that and the other. And the point is this: you cannot teach people a mentality in a weekend, in a couple of hours. You just can't. You can open the door and suggest, this, think about it.
And also, it's got to work for everybody. So these people are going, right, I don't want to attack MMA. I think it's it's a fine sport, whatever.
It's a sport,
but the people who decide to participate in MMA because they see the advertising, they think that it's the be all and end all of fighting.
Yeah.
They are completely missing the point, because A, they may not be built for it, and I mean, God, I watched a video yesterday actually, and it was about it was talking about the development of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now the history seems plausible. Simply, I've also heard the same kind of history for the some guy in Japan sent a load of his jiu-jitsu instructors or masters or whatever you want to call them around the world to promote jiu-jitsu around the world. That in itself is questionable, because why bother? But at the same time, maybe it's plausible. I understand that. That's fine. So one guy obviously went to Brazil, and another guy, and I did hear that in the UK, someone came to UK, and it was about the turn of the century, the 20th century, 1900 something, 1910, 1911, whatever. And I do understand that he taught the army in Britain. He taught the army self-defense, and that's where the jiu-jitsu comes from. It taught from then, but the guy went back to Japan. Obviously, they're not going to stay. He eventually returned to Japan and left a information book or whatever with the people that learned the jiu-jitsu, with the authorities that were training the army, whatever, and that eventually developed into the jiu-jitsu we know from the UK today. Now, I'm not suggesting, and of course, now you've got imports from, such as Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which has been promoted like to high heaven with this MMA.
Well, UFC, but
UFC,
but that is that's a discussion about the proliferation of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
That's right.
In UFC, because there's some serious issues with the very first UFC and the Gracie family about about them promoting Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but
this history mentioned the Gracie family from way back 18 something. So I don't know how. This is open to conjecture. I'm not suggesting that it's not true, because I don't know. I haven't got the facts. But the simple fact is that it did say, oh well, this guy, his brothers went on to do jiu-jitsu in the sense that we see it today, and then. But this guy was a bit too weak. He was thin and weak and couldn't do what they did, so he designed his own way of training the jiu-jitsu. If you're thin and you're weak, good luck trying to grapple with people, because it's hard enough when you're smaller than the next guy. Having a skill like that's fantastic. But I would question whether that kind of activity is going to benefit you with that kind of stature. And I'm sure there are people that are good. I'm sure there are people that are trained hard to do that. But if you look at the majority of that kind of grappling, that kind of jiu-jitsu kind of types of styles, you'll see they're big and they're strong, and they're or they're stocky, no matter what size they are, and they are going to be capable of holding people down. You got to get them there in the first place. And I'm not suggesting they don't punch, because they may have to punch in order to be able to obtain their opportunity to lock. No one's going to stand there and let you grab their arm.
No, but there's certainly you would call it an entry method, right? So whether you're throwing out a kick or a punch just to bridge the gap, but it varies the amount of training and skill these practitioners in the grappling arts actually have towards punching and kicking. Let's face it, it is a damn hard skill.
Because once you're in that zone, you are in no man's land. You are crossing no man's land, because once you've thrown that, if the other guy's skillful in punching, he's not going to let you grab him. He's going to do his damnedest. And we talked about this the other day. Most fights end up on the floor. Well, most fights start standing up. So if you can stand up and if you can move, it's going to be hard.
But
you find this, don't you, with the UFC and so on, where one year they're really
it's circular.
Yeah, they're pumping this.
Yeah.
We like to throw people. Next thing, they'd like to punch people.
Yeah, it is a circle. You see it like for a couple of years. It might be groundwork is the thing, and then some fighter will come along and he'll knock someone out from a standing start, and everybody will go, "Oh my god, it's about the standing fight." So everyone goes and trains, and then then you'll see that someone who's really good at groundwork might take this standing fighter down again, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats. It's funny. Incidentally, with that UFC, I don't know if I ever did I tell you about the Bill Wallace video on YouTube, because you did I so
you did, but you can explain.
Yeah, so Bill Wallace was the very first Bill Superfoot Wallace, the one of the legendary middleweight undefeated kickboxing full contact champions in America. Fantastically funny bloke, brilliant, really like his style. And they called him Superfoot because he only, fought sort of orthodox with his left leg for the most part.
Yeah, he had a bad right leg.
Yeah, that's right, because he did some judo earlier on in his career. But I really like him, and interesting bloke, great to watch. And anyway, he was the commentator on the very, very first UFC. And there's some videos of him presenting the commentary, and at one point he burps, and it's just hilarious. But he was saying that if you watch the oh, hang on, I got a burp now. I meant to mute that then. But anyway, Bill Wallace was saying,
you could probably put a little foghorn on.
Shall I put a foghorn on it? No, but Bill Wallace was saying on the very first UFC that he thinks that the Gracie family, because they essentially run it and had massive business dealings with it at the time, the whole UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship was set up to sort of promote Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And what happened is, if you watch the very first fight in UFC 1, the very first fight, there's this big sumo wrestler dude fighting like this this guy from the Netherlands who's doing kickboxing.
Yeah,
now the rule, was it Savat? I can't remember what it was. I'm not sure.
It was a Savat practitioner,
right?
Which is basically a French form of kickboxing.
Yeah,
lots of kicks involved.
Yeah, and basically the rules were, as Bill Wallace was told, he was saying, "Listen, we'll only stop a fight if the guy is knocked out, if or
injured, unable to continue.
or unable to continue." Right. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Bill Wallace was expecting, all this, bloody hell, basically. Anyway, the very first fight, this sumo guy, huge bloke, he rushes towards this Savat guy, and the Savat guy just dances around him, basically, and this sumo guy falls down into the corner on the side of the cage or whatever. And this Savat guy, just with a turning kick to the jaw, boots this sumo guy in the face. And this sumo guy's tooth went whizzing past Bill Wallace's face, and he's like, oh my God. Anyway, this sumo guy, you watch him, he's compass mentis is fine, he wants to continue. Right?
He punches him as well.
Yeah, he punches him as well, that's right. He goes in and punches him as well. Anyway, referee steps in, right, get up. Sumo guy's fine. Like, he could have continued. Like, you watch it, you see his face, he's all there. They stopped the fight, right? They stopped the fight. Now, Bill Wallace is thinking, and you'll have to find the video on YouTube to watch it. He's thinking, hang on, how come you just stopped the fight? You said this was, everything goes and whatnot, or you've got to fight until you're unable to continue. Now, the consensus is amongst a lot of people, and I'm not like a tinfoil hat conspiracy guy, but you imagine now that sumo wrestler got through to the next round of UFC. He has to fight Royce Gracie, who is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, but he is of a lot smaller stature than this sumo guy. Now, if this sumo wrestler was fighting Royce Gracie, what do you think Royce Gracie could have done with a huge guy like that? Now, it's anybody's guess, but I would suggest very little, in terms of what you're going to do. Lock a massive fat bloke up on the floor, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyway, so that is a conspiracy, so and then obviously that Royce Gracie went on to win the very first UFC, thus cementing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the...
Because he managed to control the kicker.
Pretty much, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting theory on that, and I'm just like, yeah, well, just watch the very first fight and you'll see what I mean. Because why stop it? The guy could have continued, but interesting.
Yeah.
But,
well, going back to self-defense, if you talk about self-defense with whatever style, in the end, self-defense is obviously a personal thing to everybody, particularly people who tend to be either weaker or smaller than the average person. They tend to think, well, wait a minute, I need self-defense more than this big tall guy. How many people, really, apart from the fact that, the lunatics who think they're hard, are going to just pick on a huge muscular guy? Very few.
Yeah.
But how many of them will then pick on, and obviously for sexual purposes, harassment or whatever, husbands particularly, there's an awful lot. Obviously most assaults are domestic, to be frank.
Yeah.
And so, the woman wants to defend herself. The young guy wants to defend his mother, or wants to defend himself. And, they need to learn something that is going to work for them. And you try showing them how. And I have to keep repeating, I do understand that small people can put locks on, and they can throw, and they can do all that sort of thing. But against a much bigger person, it's going to be an extremely difficult thing for them to succeed.
You really are climbing a mountain if you're trying to do that.
So it's something that's got to be done whereby you can strike fast, you can poke eyes, you can punch throats, you can kick groins, you can pick up an object and use it against them. Yes, there are ways that you can lock, and again, we're going back to the jiu-jitsu, but everyone can lock. It isn't about getting them on the floor, it's about stopping them from fighting. Now, yes, if you can get them on the floor, great. How are you going to keep them on the floor? Unless they're previously injured. You can't hold them down there for long with that stature. Just going back to that situation you just talked about with the sumo, you're not going to hold that guy down for long unless you can put him in a decent lock, and make him tap out. But it's totally down to people's attitudes. But you've got to create whatever self-defense you do, whatever martial art you do, or whatever techniques you prefer to train. It can't be done in a few days.
No.
It's some self-defense situation. Self-defense is probably the hardest thing to learn in martial arts. You know how many people do martial arts, but how many of those people can actually perform it in reality?
Right.
Probably 3%.
Yeah.
Right, in reality. So when you're talking about how many people do martial arts, and then you're talking about self-defense, you're talking about the hardest thing of all, and that is because you've got to have an attitude to it.
Absolutely, your attitude really will make the difference, and it's all very well as see. It's like like you said, if you're a passive person, or quite a docile person, and you do your training, you do your 2 hours a week, and then you don't think about it again until the next class. Well, I'm doing my martial art tonight or whatever. I'm afraid that in many ways doesn't lend itself to forming an attitude. You have to be, and it sounds odd to say. I mean, I've always considered like you have to verge on paranoia to a point if you want to be very aware. Okay, so but there's a point at which you can be too paranoid, if you know what I mean. But a lot of people have no sense of who's behind them in the supermarket, or whatever, you know what I mean? So a lot of people are just on, they might be walking around, but they are completely unaware really of themselves. I mean, it's things like if you're walking down the street and you see a group of lads, you know, who are, you know, taking up the entire pavement, what are you going to do? You know, would you cross the road? You know, maybe, you know. So it's just sort of preempting or thinking about possible scenarios that, you know, you can avoid. So
yeah, you wouldn't cross the road in Canada because they'll just move for you and say sorry.
Sorry. You get a much better class of mugger in Canada, right?
Yeah.
But, you know,
if they don't like the stuff, they'll send it back by post.
Yeah.
Apologise.
Oh no, but it's
apologise for wasting my time.
Yeah. But isn't it so funny? Like all these different organisations and whatnot, who we teach self-defense, you do this, that, and the other. They'll touch on the psychology of it, you know, and they'll use all the scientific terms, fight or flight, and, you know, this, that, and the other. But, you know, really, but that doesn't stop you from them charging 900 quid for a certification in this or that or the other.
That's the upsetting thing.
Oh, totally. Yeah. You know, you know, there was an organisation. You don't want me to say it, but I'm going to say it because they're gone now. It's called Fract in the UK, or it was called Fract. And the thing with Fract is it was one of these organisations where they marketed themselves on, you know, being the next true, you know, next best thing in martial arts. You know, we're going to combine all these different things and give you the tools to be able to defend yourself. And Fract at that time stood for flinch, response and combat tactics, right? So flinch, response. And the reason I bring up Fract is because one of their, what they would consider elite instructors, actually was a student of us, wasn't he? You know, nice guy, and you know, he was a nice guy, but the problem was, yeah. Oh well, I think he's fine. All right, sorry, he's a nice guy, but he was on. I saw a video of him on YouTube, basically talking about traditional martial arts, and he was saying how traditional martial arts don't work in the modern world, this, that, and the other. Now, the issue I had with that is that's his perception of traditional martial arts, because he will only perceive the martial art as hard as he's trained it. So he then turns around with a you know, mate of his and creates this style called Fract, that, you know, is the answer to all your problems. You know, we're going to teach you about the psychology of combat, flinch response, and all the rest of it. You know, and oh, you don't want me to talk about it?
No. You know, you're free to speak whatever you want.
Oh no, I won't.
You know, I was just going to comment on it. You know, because obviously he perceived, you know, martial arts how he perceived it.
Well, that's what I said.
Obviously, he's entitled to his opinion, and it's not as if, you know, if he's not entitled to ours, we're not entitled to ours, and we may as well shut up. But my problem with it is this: if you're going to call yourself an elite instructor in a system of, you know, new age self-defense, whereby you do charge £899 for a course in God knows what, you should know what you're talking about. And I'm sorry, if you're going to market your style on flinch response, we'll teach you how to combat the flinch, you know. And I go along there, and I did, and I fainted. We were sparring. I fainted to him with a punch, and next thing I hook kicked him in the head. A hook kick, right? So if you're marketing yourself on flinch response, how the hell are you susceptible to a hook kick in the head? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, wait a second. And funny enough, after I did that, they changed the name of their organisation. Instead of Flinch Response, because I showed him what a flinch was, instead of Flinch Response, it became Fight Response. And I'm like, you know, there you go. And you know, it just pisses me off. That's probably a better name.
Probably a better name, because if you don't know how to deal with a friggin' feint, who are you to you know, charge people 900 quid to try and teach them how to deal with a flinch?
It is, it's just it's a business. I mean, obviously martial arts in general, not martial arts, but people who do some martial arts and then decide that they have devised some better way or faster way to learn, are always the ones that charge the most.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame, really, because you do get people who go, well, I haven't got the time to learn a martial art. Because a lot of the time these people will go to a martial art, particularly a traditional martial art, and they'll be asked to do, press-ups and sit-ups and all sorts of stances and drills up and down the room. And they'll be going, how am I learning to fight with this? I can't learn to fight like this. And then, of course, they could go down the street and they'll see someone punching pads and, talking about how you're going to poke someone straight in the eye and do all this. And of course they'll go, well, I want that because that's automatic. It's like something you can take, stick in a plastic bag and go home with. And that's you done. The only problem is it doesn't have the desired effect when something bad happens. And no one's suggesting that doing basics in a traditional martial art is going to do you any better whatsoever. It isn't. Basics are not about fighting. Basics are about basics. It's like we always use the alphabet as an analogy. Learning the alphabet is not going to teach you to write a novel.
No.
But it gives you the basics and the format and the rules by which everyone can understand and become novelists. If they want to, if they've got that skill. So it's all about learning basic skills and learning skills that will stay with you. And remember that if you learn something in the beginning, it's those first things, the fundamental principles are the things that will carry you through, right the way through. And in the event of a situation, it's those things you'll fall back on automatically, because those are the things you will train forever, because you'll always have to train your basics. Which brings me to the point that always annoys me about when someone who's a black sash and then he gets his next black sash, and whatever his next black sash calls himself, a master or becomes a grandmaster, whatever, then and they really just leave then everything to the lower grades to teach the basics. I really don't believe in that. I really think that the most important person to teach the basics is the top guy. I really think that. I mean, at least partially he should be involved in it. He should always be there for the beginners, because it's the beginners that he can't necessarily teach them detail after detail, because they're not going to learn it all. But he must be able to give them a reason they're learning those details. Whereas a lower grade may not be able to give them the reason and just tends to turn by rote, teach by rote, I should say.
No, it's fun. Like, you can speak about the basics and whatnot, and I absolutely agree with you. And the reason I agree with you is not because I'm your student or whatever, but because it happened to me, right? So I was in an altercation a couple of years ago, and the very first thing I did to this guy, right? I won't disclose any other details, but the very first thing I did was the first move of the first set, and I hit him in the throat. Right now, that is the first thing you learn, and it's hilarious when I think about that. So if we look at basics, for me, that was the living embodiment of what you've just said about how important basics are. I went whack like that, and I lived to tell the tale. And you know what I mean? Like, so yes, it works. But here's the thing that a lot of people who do martial arts, or they don't understand, and a lot of people who don't do martial arts think they have an idea of. You don't think about what technique you're using. It doesn't even occur to you, because it just happens. You train and you drill until the technique, you don't choose it, it chooses you. And that is what a lot of people, I think, don't understand about martial arts, particularly traditional martial arts, where you've got a lot of movements. We're training all the time. I only want to do what works. How do you know what works?
It's training, really. It's like stimulus reaction. Okay, you've got to react to a specific stimulus, and if you get that, if you train, then a specific stimulus will be responded to by a specific action that has been trained for that purpose constantly, repetitively,
Yeah.
and of course never necessarily the same attack, but within the same range of attack,
Right.
either distance-wise, height-wise, speed-wise, or whatever. You're going to get an awful lot of experience by constantly practicing.
Yeah.
And that includes fighting, which is why in our last podcast I did say it's such a shame if people don't actually train fighting. And really, for any martial arts, if no matter where you are, if you cannot fight yourself, it's no big deal. If you're a good technician but you're not interested in fighting, often you're too old for it, like I am.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, get someone to come in and do it for you. Come in and experience it
Yeah.
with the students.
Yeah.
Just give them an opportunity from your own organisation or whatever. Don't try to be the master by trying to apply everything from your own perspective.
Yeah.
Try to involve the people that you probably you've already brought them up anyway. You've taught them the stuff, and now they've got the physical capability
Yeah.
of producing or reproducing what your message.
Yeah.
But they can do it in a much better way because A, they'll be far more enthusiastic about it, and B, they'll be physically fit, capable of it.
Yeah.
And you are the judge,
Yeah.
not necessarily. You don't have to be the teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
You sometimes end up a part of the class. You'll end up as an administrator, but you are the boss. You are administrating it. Everybody is responding to you. Everybody respects you, but they'll respect you a damn sight more if you don't make an asshole of yourself and try doing things that you just can't do.
Yeah. Right.
Get someone to do them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Teach people to do it, and if you're a good teacher, you'll be able to teach people to do something. I can't do a jumping, flying, spinning kick anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was to try to do that and demonstrate it, I'd fall on my ass. There's no way would I do it. But I can talk a good fight. I can tell people how to do it. I can teach people how to do it. And I can watch whether they're doing it correctly, and I can correct those mistakes. And eventually, you can say, you know what, I want you to demonstrate that in the class for me. And if that's what you do, please don't hurt yourself trying to do things that you're just no longer capable of or have never been capable of. And that includes sparring, that includes, doing dynamic techniques. And often people go, I'll show you this technique, and then they get smacked in the mouth. They go, we all have accidents, we all make mistakes, we get very complacent. I once was teaching a 6-year-old stuff, and I was showing him, and I put my hands up in front of him, and he didn't just stand there and punch me, he jumped up in the air and punched me from up there, straight on my nose, and I thought, what the hell are you doing?
Did you kick his ass?
A 6-year-old.
Oh, do you remember that time when we went to the school in Hereford to do a course for all the wayward kids?
Oh yeah.
And the teachers they got in contact with us.
It was your headmaster, James. It was your headmaster.
Yeah. They got in contact with us to teach these wayward kids in the school some Tai Chi, in the hope of calming them down. Well, we got there and we're like, there's no way you could teach these kids Tai Chi. Jesus, they were running amok. So in the end, I think we just got the gloves out and just started, sparring with them, and I just sweeping them all. Oh, it was hilarious.
What happened basically was, they said to me, I want to teach these kids Tai Chi, and try to calm them down, as you say. And I stood there and I put my arms aside, both sticking my arms out, and I went, do this, and they went, no. and then I sort of proceeded to show them little locks and techniques, and basically I loved it because I was hurting them. And so they'd go, oh, do that again, so they wanted that. So I went to the headmaster and I says, look, what we need to do with these kids is kickboxing. We need to get them to do kickboxing. So the first class I got them together and I went, bow, and they went, no. And I says, okay, if you behave this week, next week I'm going to bring the boxing gloves in and I'm going to let you fight me. And that's when we kicked shit out of it. And I tell you what, I've never seen such respectful kids. I've never seen a change in anyone. Because they just, like you say, they were throwing punches at us. We were just kicking the legs from under them.
So funny. But the best bit was these teachers who knew what little shits they were. They were just stood by the wall with the biggest grins on their faces.
The teacher, obviously for security and whatever, he stood by the door, just watching the class. And he just, after the first day, we were kicking the legs from under them, and they were on the floor, getting up, trying to hit you again, swinging their arms all over the place, just smacking them in the face with the gloves.
With the glove, we weren't doing it. No,
we never hurt them, but. The look on that teacher's face, and when I went to the door, he went, "You're coming again next week. You're coming again, aren't you? You're coming again next week." And he couldn't get his hat on. He practically wet himself. He was so. Oh, we loved it.
That's so funny.
The teacher was. Oh, we loved it.
That's so funny.
But you know what? These guys were great. They were so respectful. They changed within weeks.
Isn't it funny how the violence can change people? That's
how people pertain it to be violence. It wasn't violence.
No,
it was violent. We would have hurt them.
Yeah, but you understand the psychology of these kids, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, if you're good, you can try and hurt us. And okay.
It's the most natural thing in the world, James.
Yeah, but you can't just
discipline a child.
But you can't just ask them. You can't just sort of tap someone on the shoulder and say, please, be respectful. Sometimes you have to hit them across the head. And it's just
I mean, I'm an old fogey, right? And 5 million years of slapping a kid round the ear hole for misbehaving turns into go into the naughty corner. and I can just imagine that happening. Do you know what I mean? That is just, it is so fast. Okay, look, your kid goes towards the fire. It's an open fire. He's going to pick up a hot coal. And what do? You pull him away, say, no, that's naughty. And he'll do it again because he wants to know what it's like, right? There's no punishment there. He wants to know what it's like. Slap his hand. You won't do it again because now he knows what it's like.
Yeah.
If he goes near the fire, he knows it hurts.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have to touch the fire and get scalded and get burned and get scarred to find that out. And that's my attitude. Forgive me if you don't agree.
Yeah.
But I brought my children up. I've got 4 children. I brought them up like dogs. Right? Now people will go, what the hell? I'll tell you how I did it. You tell them once.
Yeah.
Right? You say stop. And that's it. If they don't listen, you say stop louder and stronger and firmer. They don't listen. 3rd time, smack. You know what? You never have to get to the 2nd piece. You never have to get to the loud voice. From men on. And I tell you something, my kids, from the age of 4, 5, I never touched them again, right?
Yeah.
A little spank, little slap on the legs, whatever. And I never touched them again. And we used to go to events. We used to go to the church because my wife and some of the kids were in the operatic society, whatever, and they did, plays and stuff. And so they sang in front of the church and so on. And I tell you, I had an old colonel turn round in the pulpits, not the pulpit, wherever they're called, in the seats. And he turned around and he says, how do you get your children to behave like that? And I just lifted my palm up and he went, well done. Just like that. And we'd go to restaurants and they would sit on their own table. They would read the menu and they would order for themselves at 6 years old, right? And I even when we went on holiday, we went to cafes, and the waiter would come round and give them tips. He'd give them 20 pence each.
Oh my Lord.
He says, I don't believe how you could possibly, I've never seen kids like that. Yeah. And honestly, this is the truth. And I tell you what, they've been amazing. They have been amazing. I mean, now they're little shits. You know why? Because they're in their 20s.
Yeah. Oh, we all go through it.
By the time they're 27, I mean, my eldest daughter is 26. By the time they're 27, she already says, you know what? The best thing you could have ever done. Best thing you could have ever done for us. And they really appreciate it. You tell me they're scarred, and I'll punch you in the face. Because you are stupid.
Oh, that's brilliant. Honestly, it's a shame you couldn't have treated your students more like that. You might have retained a few more over the years.
I might have disciplined those wayward ones.
Yeah, mind you, I was a wayward one once. I threw my toys out the pram, didn't I? Do you know what I found the other day? Well, not the other day. Literally about 3 hours ago when I was going through some stuff. You remember I wrote you a list of things that I'd done for you. Yeah. That when you said come and have a chat with me, because I was pissed off at the time, and so I wrote down this list of things, and I thought I was reading it. I was thinking, shit. I said I've got Daniel San. He's got nothing on me. All he did was paint a fence and wax a car. It's got stuff like knocked down shed, moved 4 tons of bricks, built a gym 8 hours a day over the summer, fixed your garden fence, garden path, painted house, insulated loft, built a plinth, fixed a carport, bathroom. What else have I got? Stuff like going to KFC, babysitting the kids. Oh God. And the best one was that's like a small selection, but I was a bit bitchy then. This is why I wrote down this list, wasn't it? I was just a bit of a bitch. But the best one was
all the time.
The best one pushed Jackie, your wife, around town for 2 hours in a wheelchair, and that made me laugh because you remember I was pushing her around town in a wheelchair, and she went into Pastime's shop with a walking stick, and I said, I'll wait outside with the wheelchair, and I thought, hey, they've got an empty wheelchair there, I'll just sit in it. So I sat in it, put the blanket over me because it was cold, and people came up and gave me £5. and then, oh God, and then when Jackie came out, like, I stood up suddenly, and you just, like, perfect timing, went, it's a miracle. And all these people were just looking at me like I was saying, hey, right. Anyway, yeah, I was a bit of a bitch then. I was being a bit of a bitch.
Yeah, but you understand that all the time you were doing these things,
I was learning.
It was a way of socializing with you to be able to present you with information, constant information, all the time.
Absolutely.
And obviously they were all life skills. I try to do that with my kids now, and they just look at me and go, what?
But
do it yourself?
Yeah, but I think that a lot of people, when they're learning a martial art, and I say this to one of my students who is really into it, I say, you don't understand the importance of theory. And when I say theory, what I really mean is these long chats about the technical side of what we do, of Kung Fu, and really asking questions and just delving deep into the fine stuff. And I will always, I'll be so grateful for all those long chats we had, whether it was in the car going up to Scotland for 6 hours at a time and whatnot, or all those years ago when we were spending so much time together, but it was those moments which really opened my mind, as opposed to just training sort of twice a week or whatever. Not that there's nothing wrong with that, I'm just saying it was such a liberating thing.
Because it's not always just about training.
No.
I mean, I know a lot of people who train really hard but misunderstand everything they train.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame because they can become so skillful and physically capable of so many things, but their mind can't catch up because they don't understand why they're doing it or what they're doing. They just keep repeating it, and yes, they'll be great, but then you say, okay, so what would you do in this situation, or what are you doing? And they don't really understand what they would do. They just simply, it's like teaching by rote basically, so they have no concept of it. You don't. You haven't got time to ask them questions.
Yeah.
You can't individually teach them.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about having time away from the class, still being able to socialise with people. And this is, of course, this has always been my problem, that I've socialised with the students, because always I guess I was more of a father figure, even despite the age, proximities at that time with some people.
Yeah.
I always preferred to be a father figure and discuss the ins and outs of why they're doing it, what they're doing, how they're doing it, than just simply standing at the front of a class and making them do it. It's pointless, because you can see some people get it just bang straight away, and other people take a long time. So you got to know people.
Yeah, right.
You've got to know them, and if you don't know them, then how can you teach them? So,
but I think that's such a atypical, when we look at, if we want to just talk about traditional Chinese kung fu training, and I use the term traditional Chinese kung fu training because back in the days, it was very much a family thing, wasn't it? Like with Master Yao and that, it was a family thing. You were surrounded by people you loved and people who wanted the best for you, but you were there to do a job. You were in a tight-knit group, and discipline, it was implied. You respect the master, the head,
and they
the
want
patriarch,
you to succeed.
and they
important.
do. But
They don't just want your money.
Yes, and so many organisations these days will sell you this bill of goods whereby, you're important, you're a black belt, this, that and the other, but really not care about your journey. They just want the money from you. They just, sell you a black belt, great, and it's just very, very sad. Now,
well, familiarity breeds contempt, as we can witness from so many people. But at the other hand, you have so many memories from people who respected that and understood that better.
So important, though. I mean, just that those talks, and it's like you read stories about sort of Mike Tyson training with Gus D'Amato, and they I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Gus D'Amato, I don't know, whatever, but you read these stories about how they just used to have these long chats and long discussions, and he was like a father figure to him, and Brendan Ingle, the famous Winkerbank boxing trainer with Nazim Hamid and Johnny Nelson and stuff, he was very much, they would all have these long chats and long talks. He was very much this sort of father figure to them, because the mere physical act, wasn't enough. You had to transcend that. You have to, and it can be a very spiritual thing. But some people overemphasize spirituality, and other people just think, yeah, lovely, I get what you're saying, I respect you, I will, we all have our moments, you're the boss, whatever. But
it's like your father. Sometimes your father can be such a prat.
Yeah.
And you know it as you grow up.
Yeah.
You think, Christ, Dad, for God's sake, you're embarrassing me. And but he's still your dad.
Yeah, you still love him.
And it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how they do it. You deal with it, because you still have. It's about the respect of his position, and just the same as a teacher. It's the respect of their position, not their personality.
Yeah.
Some people can have, little idiosyncrasies that you hate.
Yeah.
But you've got to respect their position, and the knowledge they're giving you is not their personality.
Yes.
It's their personal knowledge.
Yes.
And it's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
So don't judge people by their personality. Judge people by what they've given you, or what they want to give you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in that sense, you've got a good relationship with a teacher, or a father for that matter.
Yeah.
So, but Christ's sake, some people, they just
want, they want and want.
Oh no, well, I'm better than you. I mean, how many people? I want to ask any instructor this: how many people in your car park have got a better car than you? You go park your little car in the side, and you just go in and you teach everyone, and people come in, and then you go out after the class and you look people getting into Mercedes and and BMWs and all this kind of thing. You're thinking, Christ's sake, I'm in the wrong job here.
Yeah.
And but you don't care.
Well, they
But
have to they have to
can't
bow to
care.
you.
Yeah,
And
that's right. You can have a garbage collector, a bin man in your class, and standing next to a lawyer,
yeah,
and that lawyer will have to bow to that garbage collector, and that is
Yeah.
the principle of martial arts. There is no ego. There should be no ego. There should be total respect, and that's how people can learn together. And when you're training with someone, if you are training with someone and you know you're better than them, if you attempt to better them without bringing them with you, then the gap grows wider as
Yes.
you go better. They don't get any better.
Yes.
You've got no one to train with.
yeah,
You
right.
lose it. You've got to bring everybody up with you. You've got to respect your students, your beginners and your novices, whatever. You've got to really look after them.
Yeah.
If you don't look after them, then you have nothing at the end, and you've gained nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things I'll always take, from our time together. I want to talk about, if we can sort of, branch away. I want to talk about some kung fu principles. So I want to just get a bit technical now.
Okay.
I want
Part two.
Yeah, part two. I want to talk about speed, because how many times do you say, Lau Gar, based on speed? You say it a lot. So I want to put to you. I want to ask you first of all, what do you mean by that? And I also want to just put to you just one of my definitions of speed that I was writing down the other day, just thinking about it. Okay, so I would say, if we're looking at speed, okay, it's an expansive concept. What we mean when we say you've got to be fast, okay, most people think that speed is defined as speed in technique. But I would argue that, okay, what's faster than speed in technique? Would it be sort of perception of a technique? Yeah. And what's faster than perception? Anticipation. What's faster than anticipation? Planning. And what's faster than planning? Avoidance. So I was just wondering if you would maybe agree with that, or do you want me to elaborate a bit more on what I've concluded there? But essentially, what I want to get from you is we've got to define what we mean by speed.
Well, that is a good definition. The fact that you are anticipating a technique obviously makes it a lot quicker for you to respond. The more knowledge you have, the more experience you have, the more you'll be able to anticipate. But I'm going to approach it from a different direction.
Okay.
Because often people, think, well, how fast can I be? How fast do I have to be in order to beat this guy who is really fast?
Yeah.
So let's just put this kind of this kind of example, if you like. So you've got two fighters, and they are totally identical to each other in every way, shape or form. They are both super fast, right? They are both super fit, and they are both skilled, right? How can you make one faster than the other, right? And so I've got to give the answer, of course, haven't I?
Yeah.
The answer is the one has got to slow the other down. Simple as that, isn't it?
Right.
It makes him faster, because, in other words, he's got to use strategy that will force the other guy to think in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
He's got to make him move in the wrong direction. He's got to make him move when he doesn't want to move, but he has to because he's seen some kind of feint.
Yeah.
So all the time you begin to control the other guy's response time and reaction time,
because you can't control it physically. That's what you're saying.
You can't go any faster.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can't be faster than him, because remember, he's identical to you.
Yes.
Right? So it's like looking in a mirror and fighting yourself in a mirror. How can you be faster than the guy in the mirror? Right?
Yeah.
So
perception, anticipation.
Yeah. So you've got to anticipate what he's doing, yes, but sometimes you have to create what he's doing in order to be faster. So once you can create a situation where you know what he's doing, in other words, you are putting things in his head, then you can anticipate his response.
So
Because you know what you've put in his head,
Yeah.
you know the likely way he's going to respond, so you can anticipate the way he's going to respond, and you get the better.
So, for example, you drop your guard a bit, present your head, and the likelihood that he's going to hit that is a very high percentage. So you are outthinking him. You are
Yes.
anticipating that he will hit you there. Thus,
Yeah.
one step ahead. So it's like a game of chess. You're just
That's right. So you stick your leg out when he comes in.
yeah.
And that's it, and you have a much longer leg than he has a fist, and although the fist is faster, you still got to get across that distance
Yeah.
in a situation where you already know he's doing it, so you can anticipate the fact that he's going to do it, and you can obviously react an awful lot quicker than that, or simply move and hit him, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. I'm not talking about response or techniques
Yes.
that can be used in response. I'm talking about the strategy and tactics you can use to slow a person down. So if you think someone is stronger than you and you think someone is faster than you, then you have to use your brain and your head in order to either slow them down or make them weaker.
Yeah.
Right? So your techniques are there to make them weaker. Your techniques are there to make them slower. That way you haven't got to be the fastest individual or the strongest individual. You have to be the brightest individual.
Yeah.
So, and that comes from experience.
But what we're indirectly talking about now is your mental attitude, which we were sort of talking about before. Is that paranoia? Now, if we can look at paranoia, for example, all right, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but from my point of view, you can be paranoid to the point where you're walking down the street looking for threats and whatnot. Or if you're, say, training a sport, say, let's just use kickboxing, for example. If you're trained in sport, that paranoia can translate to I'm consciously aware of what his capability is, so I'm not going to give him any targets. I want to make him do techniques that without him realizing I'm making him do it. But that paranoia can also translate into a sports situation whereby you could be effectively planning how to beat your opponent beforehand, so you could be standing at the side of the mat watching what he does, what his responses are and whatnot.
Yeah, well, we all know that boxers will watch video footage, and kickboxers will watch video footage for hours to see how their opponent fights. That's what gives them a better chance of survival.
Right.
But you can't do that in a self-defense situation.
No, you can't.
So you've got to have the mental capacity to be able to understand the fight, understand what situation you're in, but not only the individual that's fighting you, but the environment you're fighting in.
Yes.
And that includes the light source, that includes the direction of light, that includes
the ground,
the ground levels and the ground makeup, whether it's gravel, whether it's grass, whether it's wet, whether it's dry, whether it's light,
what footwear you've got on.
Yeah, the kind of footwear you may have, and the kind of clothes you may be wearing. There are certain things that are going to really restrict you, and you didn't go out to fight that night.
No,
and you've got your best suit on.
Yeah, right.
With a big overcoat. You're not going to be able to do dynamic kicks. So good luck to you if that's all your style gives you, dynamic kicks.
Yeah,
it's like you were talking about the guy about the jeans the other day.
Right. Yeah.
And how he said, how can I do these kicks? I wear jeans all the time. Well, don't bloody rely on kicks then. Yeah. So you've got to have a martial art, not a martial movement.
Yeah, right. But this mentality. I mean, I sometimes. I mean, I would never profess to be an expert, not at all. But through my experience, and I would wager to bet a lot of people have the same sort of thing as me. But I can sort of look at someone's gait, as they're walking, and tell you if they're going to be, able to throw a punch. Do you know what I mean? So it's I'm judging physicality. Totally. You know what I mean? So it's like, and this paranoia we were talking about, or I was talking about. You didn't use the word, but this is sort of my perception of what I'm doing. Obviously, too much paranoia is bad, but all the time I'm looking at things, I'm looking at people, and so you're always thinking, oh, what if, oh, he looks handy, oh, he's a big guy.
It becomes your job, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's like having a job where you're constantly. I mean, I drive trucks, okay, for many years, and I know whether there's going to be a car by the side of me or not, whether I can see that car or not, simply because you are aware of the situation before the car arrives, and then you are aware of how much space you have and whether or not a car could be there, and so on and so forth. So it's just the way it is. And obviously, as anyone who drives, whether they drive a truck or whether they just drive a car, they become very aware of certain aspects of road skills, and of course you're always going to have the lunatic who really doesn't care for anyone else except themselves. Apparently it's their road. So
didn't you know?
So but that's another. I mean, it's all about your work. I mean, you could just simply work on a factory floor, and you could work a machine, but believe me, bloody fast on that machine. You're so fast, and you know exactly where, my son worked in a factory for a short while. He kept on getting his fingers trapped. He was wrapping cardboard stuff with a machine that wrapped it with these plastic wraps, and these the cord, and every time he pressed the button, he'd leave his fingers, and you'd have to try and get his fingers out because he constantly stuck with his fingers in behind the straps. Oh, brilliant! So silly.
Fantastic.
But he, like I say, he didn't work there for very long. But he, it's just a job as we went to move Vancouver. So,
but it's almost like a total immersion of something. When people say, I want to learn a martial art, what if they train it for long enough that the martial art becomes them in their everyday life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is why you've got to choose the martial art. It's got to be a logical martial art, and unfortunately, it's such a difficult thing for people to choose because they're never going to know whether it's right or wrong. But the logic would have it is just talk to the instructor, understand, read up on everything, and you're always going to get martial art books or whatever that favour one style or another. I mean, let's look at us.
Absolutely.
We totally favour traditional kung fu, if you like, but within that we have a peripheral vision which includes the ability to fight both technically and in self-defense and in contest, in competition. So for that reason, we value what we know, right? It's a very difficult situation to get into where you join a martial art and then, we don't do competition, or, we just do this, or we don't do that, or whatever. And then it becomes, there's got to be a reason why you don't do it.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And there's got to be a reason why you're slower than the next guy.
Yeah.
And it always upsets me to watch someone when they come along and they say, well, I do this and I do that. And I say, well, show me a back fist or whatever. That's always a good thing when someone comes and they say, oh, I've done taekwondo or I've done karate or whatever, and you say, oh, you must do back fists or whatever. Would you like to show me a back fist? And they do, and the first thing they do is pull their hand right back. It doesn't matter what grade they are. They pull their hand right back to try to create some energy, and they bring it back to you, which takes it 3 times longer. So, and you just think, well, do it to me, and then you just stop them from hitting you all the time, as fast as you possibly can, and then you say, right, this is how we do it, and you get them to, be ready to cover it, and they can't even lift their arm in time. And it's such a shame and it's always a good seller, if you like. It's always a good sales point. But I don't think it's ever been about the sales point. I think it's always been about, please, let's educate you. Please, let's try to make you good at a decent martial art.
Or give you a good foundation at some, because there's so many.
We're privileged for that reason, and we shouldn't forget that. We've been privileged in knowing that. I could have, when I was in the Navy, I came home and I just was so desperate to learn a martial art. I went up the road and there was this kendo club, and I begged the guy for me to join. I wanted to join, and he went, "You're in the Navy. You're never going to be here. You're only ever going to come once every 6 months."
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, he's right, I guess. But I was so desperate to join that I wanted to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and then I queued up for the karate, as I told you. I went to karate. The only thing that stopped me continuing that karate is the fact that I went in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if I hadn't have gone in the Navy, good God, I would have been training karate. So that's
well, I mean, you know, I mean, if I
doesn't bear thinking about.
No. Well,
to be fair,
yeah. Go on.
I love you all, karate people.
We do. That's sincere.
I love everybody that tries to do a martial art. The only thing I don't like is when you don't take the logical stand.
Right, so this is an interesting, right? You just said that. Because we got to be careful about... I can't stand this thing whereby my style's better than your style, you know, because that's been going on forever, right?
Yeah.
And no matter where you know, it's like this, oh, I'm from... you're from up north, I'm from down south, mate. I'm better than you. You know what I mean? So it's like that's been going on forever and ever. What I always think, and I probably got it from you, is let's just look at logic. All right, let's look at logic. So if we analyze, and I'm pretty happy with the definition of martial science, the fastest technique at the given moment, utilizing maximum power, but inflicting maximum damage, but utilizing minimum effort. Now, with that in mind, you can apply that across the board to every single martial art because they're essentially doing the same.
Yeah.
But people come up with different conclusions. So when you say to them, do the fastest technique you can, and they stand there and they do a reverse punch or whatever, and you're like, hang on a second, mate, is that the fastest technique? You know, so it's about the logic in what you're doing. Is it, how much of it is logic and how much of it is style?
Yeah, well, first of all, we've got to make sure that people understand that we're doing the maximum amount of impact, if you like, using the maximum amount of the minimum amount of energy to create the maximum amount of effect with, but only to the degree of that energy. Okay, we can't literally create the maximum amount of energy you could do simply because you don't need to. You only need enough to render it useful. Okay, to render the other person, or to give him the option, or give him the attitude that, oh, you know what, I don't want to fight anymore. Now I'm starting to defend, or now I'm getting hurt, or it literally injures him, or harms him in some way. So when we're talking about the minimum amount of effort to create the maximum amount of energy, it's relative to the amount of effort you put into it, but we are trying to create the maximum amount of energy till it becomes to the degree where it is useful.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We can't obviously, if I stand in front of you and I pull my hand right back behind me to throw a punch at you, it's obviously going to be far more powerful than if I was just to hold my hand in front of me and throw and punch you.
Yeah.
But the second one is going to be a lot more effective because it's a lot faster. It's still going to hurt, but it's not going to have the same amount of energy as the first one. But the first one is completely and utterly obsolete because by the time I pulled my arm back, you've already hit me.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why that's what we mean by the maximum amount of energy with the least amount of effort in the fastest direction.
Yeah.
Right, and but that should be logical with every martial art. But unfortunately, we know, and you know, and everyone knows, it's not.
Yeah.
But they will argue till they're blue in the face that theirs is the best martial art, ultimate style, and so on. Everyone will say it's the best style. Well, why? Why is it the best style?
Yeah.
What gives it that ability to defend itself against. Most people who do martial arts are thinking in terms of it's the best style for self-defense. In other words, they can beat some guy up in the street that might be a drunk who has absolutely no idea what he's doing anyway, and so they can maybe get the the better of him, but that doesn't mean a thing.
You mentioned the drunk. I always think that the most dangerous type of person to fight is the person who does not know how to fight. Yeah, because they're unpredictable. So you look at you've always used the example with me of fighting the drunk. Okay, so if you're fighting a drunk person and you start thinking, I'm going to feint him and trick him, that drunk person won't even see you feint. He's not going to respond. No. He's just going to swing his bloody arm and hope for anything. And if you're so dumb as to think that you're such a skillful fighter that he can't possibly hit me, well, guess what? There's a good chance he will. The unpredictability of people.
Plus, he won't feel a lot of it. Anyway.
No, he won't. No,
so you better make sure you get him
absolutely.
down.
Yeah, absolutely. I can absolutely agree with that. But it's but we've got to transcend in many ways the what's on the surface of martial arts. We've really got to look at, like we've always said, about the strategy, the tactics of what you're doing. No matter what you're doing, if you're listening from a different style, whatever, just ask questions, find an argument for and against everything you do, and and unfortunately, not a lot of people do that.
No, they just take it as for granted that the person that's talking to them with the big black belt on knows what he's talking about, and it's often the case that they actually don't, and and it's even more often today that they've probably checked it up on YouTube before they've started to teach it. Wow, and they've, that's a good idea, let's do that. I mean, one of the worst things I hate about doing videos, and which we will tend to be doing more videos, is simply that the people who you really do not want to learn from you will learn from you. But if you don't do it, other people will learn from them. And that's even worse. So I'd rather accept that someone who has betrayed me or dislikes me or whatever has learned from me. I would much prefer that than for complete beginners get conned by those people. Absolutely. And so which is why I guess we're going to do a series of. I guess we're going to be dumb bitches, aren't we?
But there's a lot of false people out there claiming to do what they blatantly can't do. I mean, we've got all we can do. All we can do is criticize their technique. Can't necessarily criticize their character. I have no intention of undermining people's desire to learn martial arts or their desire to train or to teach even. What I do want to do is correct the people who are viewing those videos, give them the opportunity to view them with the experience we will be able to provide for them when they're watching those videos. And we're going to do that with, there's a lot of bad Lau Gar videos out there. And I mean, loads.
Well, we'll start with the Lau Gar. We'll start with the Lau Gar because it's only fair. And I'm hoping that that people will, and it's the thing is, you see, if people have got teachers, they can be corrected. And that's that. I mean, given the fact that, yes, I'm in a situation where I'm in a completely different country. But I'm also in a situation where I understand and have developed to a point now where it isn't so necessary. I mean, I love the idea of learning. I love the idea of taking on more information, and I will always be able to take on more information. But a lot of that is because it's processed. It's already processed. So I have a recipe, and I don't really need to learn new forms in order to improvise and develop that recipe. The recipe is there. Now remember that 12 years of training should be enough to learn a style, okay? And with 40 years of training, I bloody hope I got the idea now.
But you are talking about 12 years is enough to learn the style physically. But we're always going to grow mentally. We're always going to it's everything. And if you like, we're talking about the videos on YouTube that we're going to do. Whatever videos we put on YouTube, what we don't do is we don't say, listen, this is our interpretation of it now. As we talked about before, you've got void and impermanence. Things will always change.
Oh this is that's one of the things. As another reason I don't like doing videos, or even writing books. I'm in the middle of writing a book at the moment. But it's just impossible to judge the future, because in the future I will have a different opinion. But that's the good thing. I will have a different opinion, and also I will look different when I do something on a video, simply because of the fact that time moves on and you develop. Everyone develops. So you see so many people who have written books and have said so many things that at the time they truly believed, and now they turn around and go, well, crap, I wish I hadn't have ever said that. So that's a typical example.
Tower G
remember, Yeah, well, the thing for me, when we talk about experience or whatever, is my experience is judged by others. So if people think I'm talking out my hat or anything, then they can comment about it. There's absolutely I have no problem with that. For me, I believe in what I'm saying, and I've got to have, my opinion has got to be authenticated by the facts of the techniques I'm doing, or the reason I'm doing those techniques, the purpose for those techniques. So, and if I have that, then that's all I need to convince people. Now, but I don't want people just to go, oh, you said this, so this must be right. I don't want that. I want them to question that technique. Throughout my teaching career, I've always asked people to question. Oh, but what if this happens? What if that happens? Well, of course, you're always going to get the daft questions, but really, there's no such thing as a bad question. A daft or a silly question is a question you ask yourself when you're on your way home on the bus. Because you didn't bother to ask it at the class. That's what we refer to as a bad question.
Sure.
So everybody have a right to ask good questions. Or bad questions. I
was doing the sets the other day. I just put them on film for you, didn't I? And I sent them to you. And years ago you taught something one way, and now you have a different reason for it. So you teach it in a slightly different way, but still within the confines of what we're doing. And it's that sort of organic progression of martial arts that should not be fixed. Obviously, certain things, like a technique in a sequence, in a form, set, pattern, cat, or whatever you want to call it, it's fixed, right? But your interpretation of it,
it's fixed because it's a proven movement, right? How you interpret that proven movement, that's what changes.
Absolutely. And that leads us on to one for all the Lau Gar people listening right now. What I want to do is I want to talk about, last week we just talked a bit about the first set. I just want to talk a bit about the second set and what it's about, what the sketch is. Give us a skinny, Mr. Newbie. What's going down? So,
well, it's called a set hand movement, isn't it? For a reason.
All right. What's it called?
Was changed John Sao.
Okay, and what's it mean?
John Sao.
Not John Sao. Some people on YouTube. Oh, it's John Sao. It's like, no, it's not. No.
John. But the thing is, you see, again, I apologise if my Chinese is incorrect, but it does mean like a foundation. If you build a house near a riverbed or whatever, you need that is built on posts, right? Those posts are the foundations, and zhong is what that's what it refers to, the foundations of the style, or foundation, of the martial art.
It's worth just sort of, for people who don't know what we're talking about, I want you to, because Wing Chun is very popular, it very much looks like Sunim Tao in many ways, the first form in Wing Chun.
It does. I agree.
But that's just a comparison for people who are wondering what we're talking about. Whereas the first set, whereas the first set we mentioned last podcast is done in a horse stance, just hand movements, so very little body movement, so to speak.
Yeah, they are similar simply because they come from a similar area at a similar time.
Yeah.
So trained from a similar background.
Yeah.
So it just means, as far as that set is concerned, it's just the basic movements, and they are repeated on both arms, one after the other, always starting with the left in this case.
Yeah. Why the left?
Well, I don't know. I think simply, the first one is started with the right, the next one is started with the left.
Can I speculate and put something to you?
Yeah, by all means.
First set is done with the right hand first, in my opinion. I would suggest because everyone is very capable. Most people are going to be right-handed. Okay, so it means they can pick up a technique a lot quicker than they would do on their left hand, right? It's something intricate, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when we're learning later sets, for example, the second one, you'll start off with your left hand first, maybe because it's your weakest hand and you want to train that. But for the initial first set, you get the intricate moves done first with your right hand. Obviously, it's done both hands, and
we could say that, but
well, I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, it's a good theory. I like that. It's a good theory. Remember the first part of the movements are all done with both hands.
Yes.
And then your hands are returned back to the waist, and then as you start, you're starting with jig choi, which is a straight punch.
Yeah.
And invariably, that jig choi is used like a jab as a lead hand.
Yeah.
And the lead hand is invariably the left.
Yeah.
Because if you're orthodox, if you're southpaw, it would be the right.
Yeah.
Okay, but as an orthodox situation with your left foot forward and your right hand ready as a reverse punch, your left hand would be the first hand to move.
Yeah, right.
So there's another theory if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't really need to worry about those theories.
No, I know. I just
the jig choi is dead straight. It's meant to be.
When you say a straight punch, what you mean is the fist is vertical, not horizontal.
That's right.
So a lot of people I see misinterpret this set, particularly doing those punches, and they take a Wing Chun approach. By that I mean what they'll end up doing is they'll actually cock their wrist backwards and almost strike upwards with the bottom three knuckles. I mean, what issues do you have with that?
I've got no problem with it, but those are the weakest knuckles.
Yeah, right.
But some people will argue, wait a minute though, if I twist my wrist at the last minute, I'm increasing a little bit of energy, which is fine, but you can do that the other way. You can do that with the top knuckle.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever, horses for courses, as they say.
Yeah, okay.
So,
but if you're teaching the set though, Steve, I mean, what are you gonna, you're not gonna get...
I'm not going to add that kind of detail when I'm teaching that set.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm if I want to, I would use the top knuckles. I certainly wouldn't use I wouldn't put the smallest knuckle at risk.
Yes.
And the small finger at risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just simply going to do a straight punch.
Yeah.
And then of course when you open them, your smallest finger is furthest away as you open it. So you're just basically opening or rotating it around.
And what are all these rotations for and about? What?
Oh, it's really important to practice rotation. Rotation is, whenever I'm teaching, most people hear me say rotation 1,000 times in an evening. Rotation is so important. Rotation can't be denied or obstructed, okay, in the sense that if someone grabs you and you rotate your hand, whether it's in the line or whether it's as a circle, okay, depending on how much leverage you got or freedom you've got in doing it, they can't block it. When I say block, I mean they can't check it, they can't stop it, they can't hold it, because as the movement turns, the whole environment changes, the way that the hand moves changes, so that they can't put the correct muscles to hold that position, because the position changes in every point of the turn. It's like the face of a clock. The 1 o'clock is going to be totally different perception to 2 o'clock, to 3 o'clock, to 4 o'clock. So if someone's holding it, then they're trying to pull against you at the 1 o'clock position. but you'll move into 2 o'clock position. Now they've got to try to change their position again. Now they've got to change their position again for 3 o'clock, and so on. And it isn't going to happen. You just can't do it. You can't stimulate your muscles to change, to try to put any kind of grip on while the hand is rotating. So it's very difficult. It's a very easy way of escape, using rotation for every point, in fact. So the second set I would suggest is a great way of training rotation, as you know, and if you are doing the rotating with the wrist, of course you are, in effect, if anyone has got you, holding you, or doing sticky hands with you, you're rotating from the inside to the outside, or the outside to the inside, or from the top to the bottom, so you are changing the perception of your opponent. He misunderstands it very easily.
It's would you? I mean, I would suggest as well. We're looking at a lot of centerline techniques within that set.
Everything goes to the center. Yes. Yeah. Everything must go to the center. The center. Remember, the heart mouth. Always, we're going to protect the center. Yeah.
Another thing. Again, and this is nigh on impossible to describe, but there's within the middle section of Zhong Sao, you've got some very intricate movements pertaining to wrist. What a lot of people
bounce,
would
bounce,
wrist bounces. Now, that's a very delicate move within the set. Obviously, we can't really describe it on a podcast, but people who do it,
it's the one for conjecture, isn't it? Yeah, it's the one. It's the one. Those people who do the second set. Okay, shall we? We'll try and describe it verbally, but of course it would need a video to describe it. So people are going out with their hand, their palm out. They're rotating. When I say palm out, it's like a willow leaf. It's up in the air. The fingers pointing to the top and the thumb enclosed. And then they're going to turn it and they're going to rotate it all the way around. And as they do so, then it returns back to that palm up position, or fingers up position. Not palm up, but fingers up position, like it's known as the willow palm. And as it withdraws, it bounces. So what people misunderstand, I think, my problem is with it, is they bounce it down, complete the bounce down, or it's not even a bounce, it's just a drop, and then they send the wrist out dead straight against a supposed target. Well, this secondary movement, this movement where the wrist is going out, has absolutely no striking value at all.
So may I just stop you, because what you're saying is I want to try and describe it. So as you do the initial bounce down with the wrist, you imagine your wrist is now about belly button height, and what a lot of people will do then is they've completed the movement, as in the bounce, but then they will raise that arm with the wrist up to, let's say, head height again, and it's that
face
period, face height. It's that period between them stopping at belly button height after doing the movement and raising the arm. That's the point at which you're saying that's actually a useless move.
It's yes, but I obviously have to complete that explanation. Because people will say, well, what's it in the set for? Well, it is actually a useful move if you do it correctly, if you do it usefully. And the problem is that when you put out the wrist again straight, there's no way you're going to hit anyone like that, because if they turned, they would just bend your wrist, twist your wrist, or whatever. So it's not about that. It is actually a sideward motion. The wrist is sideways. You can actually break wood with your wrist. We used to do that in demonstrations a lot, breaking the wood an inch thick with your wrist. Simply, it's a bouncing out. So the bouncing down must not just go down, but it must bounce back again. It's like a suspended motion. It just I want you to imagine that you're almost as if you're slicing inwards, and then the wrist bounces out again. It's just a constant. It's the same movement, right? It's exactly the same movement, and not two separate movements. So you're bouncing down as if to escape someone's grab, as if to block someone's strike, immediately coming straight back up, and either hitting their arm muscle groups, or their face, or even their chest, but sideways.
Yeah.
So
if you perceive it as a forward strike, I mean, you're not going to hit them with your knuckles.
No, you're not going to hit them with your fingers. You chop your fingers off. You can still do kung fu. The only thing you can't do is grab and finger strike.
Yeah.
So it's the wrist is the center point there.
With regard to that movement, I mean, those people I appreciate who do Lau Gar know what we're talking about. It's repeated 3 times just because it is such a difficult move. Now,
that's right.
The reason it is a difficult
that's
move.
the same with all sets.
Yeah. And you do see a lot of repetition in the sets. Great. If we're looking at the way, I mean, we can talk about the way we generate power with every single technique. But I remember you've always said to me that, listen, we're generating power in 3 ways if we're using a technique. Number 1, we've got linear force of our arm coming down. Number 2, we've got a rotational force. So when you imagine if you're looking at the back of your hand now, everybody, and you just turn it round to your palm, that rotation, that's a form of energy. And finally, we've got what you deem as focal point energy. So if you bend your wrist and then just straighten it out, you can generate a little bit of power.
So basically, those 2 sets of energy are ending up, if you like, or I don't know the word, but they're
accumulated
to that. Yeah, if you like, they're accumulated together but at that point.
Yes.
The point of impact,
Yeah.
And depending on how big that point of impact is, will depend on how much penetration there is, fingers, or fist. The other thing, of course, I wanted to point out about the second set, that particular movement, that wrist movement, is to prove my point. You'll find, and this is a misconception for many people who do Lau or other martial arts, is that all the forms effectively are doing the same movements, but they're doing them for different reasons. And we've said this before, and I hope to be able to convince people of this. They're doing them for different reasons and have different uses and in different directions. They may have additions to them, increased different techniques, but the basic to the movements are the same. And to prove this, I'll give an example of that bounce is done with both hands in Lau Gar Look Up Kyun. So in that 6th set, they are literally bringing the hand in and then bouncing it straight back out again, but they're bouncing them both out sideways as they do the kick backwards. So they're bouncing out. And if you think about that hand, instead of them just pulling in and then doing that separately, they must pull in, and immediately that is a bounce. Just
a point for you, just for me. Could you interpret the opening to Lau Gar Look Up Kyun as well? Not the opening, but when you're in a horse stance, is it the same move? Pulling in the arms and bouncing out with the wrists. You know what I mean? At the start, it doesn't matter. I'm just. I don't want to talk about Lau Gar Look Up Kyun just yet, but. Yes, you can. The move is at the end of the set when you're kicking back with the leg and bouncing out.
Yeah.
But what about
that's
the
the
start?
one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Never mind.
You know what?
What?
If I have to get up off my chair.
No.
To do it.
No.
Yeah.
Don't worry. To be honest, I want to stop talking about that now. Because my brain has just gone out for a pizza trying to figure out. I'm thinking, are people understanding this? And probably not. And fine, we're sorry.
No, that's flat palms anyway, James. That'll be flat palms. That's not the same.
All right. Well, okay. I'd have to demonstrate it on a video.
Just out to the outside and then back to the front.
Okay.
Both palms.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
No. Never mind. Never mind. Right. Talking about the set. Now, originally the second set. It was a lot shorter, wasn't it, than what we know it is now? Can you?
Now it's got the kicks in it, the chow, which is like a stamping kick. People also often, one of the mistakes that people make, in my opinion, is they try to stamp forwards, but of course, if you're doing a low kick and his legs are in a fighting position, there is nothing there to kick, so you have to kick towards the forward leg, his forward leg, and obviously depending on which leg you're kicking with, because you do both sides, then you'll be kicking towards the knee or the shin, but slightly across,
Right, yeah.
And not side like a side kick,
Yeah.
but a stamp turned the other way. So your foot is actually turned the opposite way to a side kick, and you're literally stamping. That's
Yeah.
called chow.
Chow.
To stamp. Yeah.
Why was the I mean, if we break it down, if we break the set into three, a beginning, the middle, and the end bit, why was the end bit added? What was the reason for that?
I'm not privy to that kind of information. I guess, all the sets were changed to become left-handed, but of course adding the kicks and so on, maybe, I mean, you never know, maybe it's because they felt it was too similar to the Wing Chun Silim Tao.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought, well, we'd like to apply kicks, and Chow was not really practiced too much in the set, and it was a great place to put it in order to apply that kick, because it wasn't in the basic kicks.
Yeah.
I mean, it is obviously a kick, but it's never applied in any other part of any other set.
Sure.
To my knowledge.
What about
this moment in time?
What about Lau Gar look up Kuhn at the end? Is that not a chow?
Lau Gar look up Kuhn.
After you've done the back kick, grabbing. Is that not a form of chow?
Yeah.
And in Far Kuhn?
But remember, James, that was changed as well.
Okay, all right, yeah, sorry. What about in Far Kuhn as well? Is there not a stamp in that? When you're preventing the leg and...
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry,
No, it's great. But it it's in the beginner's point of view.
Yes,
in the first point of view, it wasn't really a kick, and it's a simple kick.
Yeah. It is.
That's the point of it. So having it in higher grade kicks is fine, or rather sets. But having it in in the lower part of the syllabus was instrumental, I guess, in giving them more.
When performing the set, I want to just talk a bit about the breathing. Can you just explain to people about sort of what your breathing should be and the cadence at which you do the set?
Yeah, when you're doing the second set, the breathing has got to be the same speed. It's like Tai Chi, the same speed as the movement. So obviously you don't rush through the movement. You're trying to breathe it out, if you like. The technique is being breathed out, and then you're breathing in as you bring the hand in. Any inward movement tends to be an inward breath, and any extended movement tends to be a breath out. And that's just to coordinate your breath and your strike with it. But it's meant to be done slowly, okay? And Maciel would say that he was proud to be able to have taken 18 minutes to perform that form.
Really?
So
Right.
So it's like it's like practicing Tai Chi in effect.
Yeah. But when we do it, we're not doing it for 18 minutes though. I mean,
no, but people would.
That's a hell of a long grading, isn't it?
Yeah, people could argue. Yeah, Christ, people could argue that it's like a qigong kind of exercise. You
right.
could apply it like in that kind of sense.
But then you could do that to all sets.
I mean, this is only conjecture. I don't, whether or not that's true. Is people can decide for themselves how they would like to perform it. Yeah. It's meant to be a slow-moving form. Anyway.
Right. Okay. Am I correct in saying the third part of it, the end with the kicks, is slightly increased pace?
That's going to be faster. Yeah, that's going to be a pace. That is.
Yeah. Talk to me a bit about the stance in which you're in during this form, because it's quite upright and.
Well, it's called a sheep shearing stance. I don't know what language Wu Chi is, but it's which dialect.
Yeah.
But they tend to call it Wu Chi stance or sheep shearing stance, as if you got your knees together, as if you're holding on to a sheep that you're shearing. Yeah. With snips. Yeah. So traditionally a farmer would hold the sheep down while he's cutting the fur, the wool. My God, you've got the dog.
Funny.
So that's with your toes turned in.
I milked the cow. What do you mean? I got a bull. Oh, sorry. I was watching that film Kingpin the other day. Oh, never mind. So go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying. Well rehearsed, this is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just saying that when you turn your toes in, I mean, it's the same as Tai Chi. You're turning your toes inwards, and by doing so, you're collapsing into the set, into the stance, and it's a much more composed stance than if you were trying to maintain your legs or your feet out straight in front of you, which means now that you have to support your legs constantly, because if you relaxed, the legs would start to crumble, they'd start to collapse down. So by turning the toes in, you actually collapse inwards and anatomically become a bit like the Eiffel Tower.
Right. Yeah.
Shape of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
So you're turning your stance in, and that supports the rest of your weight. So you can then concentrate on doing the form itself, the movements of the form.
What a common mistake I see a lot of people do, and I only say this because one of my students was doing it. He leant forward too much on the end. So he's leaning forward too much, and
you don't want to be leaning.
No, and he doesn't do it now. It's just the problem he's got nerve damage, and so he was having to do it to self-correct. Obviously, you don't want to be leaning forward on it.
No, you do. You need to be sunk. You need to give yourself to gravity totally dead straight.
Yeah.
Your hips are rotated forwards. Your toes are turned in. You're sinking. Yeah. And very much like the beginning of the Tai Chi form, of Yang form, I have to say.
A bit of a contentious thing with this as well. What's the height of the bong sao?
It's basically you're slicing it inwards and rotating it, so it's going to be the normal position of your arm, like down towards the groin. Okay.
So it's not.
So your hands really are around your groin. It's a body protection,
right?
Not a groin protection.
Yes, right. But
it's rotating. I know that in Wing Chun they do higher.
Yes, it's very, very much higher, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't do high bong saos for the simple reason that it opens up your armpit.
But with the caveat of if you want to do it, do it.
Oh, of course, if you want to do it, you can do whatever you want. But low bong saos tend to be the policy in our style, and the top half is protected by the other arm.
Yes.
So if you're basically closing up everything, and your one arm is going to protect the top half.
Also, a lot of times I see people do the second set, and what I want to talk about is the continuation of moves. Now, obviously, we start off with left side, and then you repeat the move on the right side. So, for example, if I'm doing that straight punch going out, as I withdraw that punch back to the heart mouth, I actually want it straight out. Yes, but as it's returning. Now that's the way I interpret it. Then I'm making it a useful. Most people, not most people, but I've seen it done when some people will return their fist back to the start point and then start again. So we're looking at continuation.
Yeah, well, as a beginner, that's probably the way that you would be taught. But as you develop, you realise that if you're doing a basic walk and punch, for instance, you never pull your arm back and then throw the next one out. So they are protecting each other, one protecting as it comes in and developing the energy for the next one. So as it's pulling in, it's the other one is being forced out. So it's when you're doing a basic punch, a basic walk and punch, in the same way as you're doing a standing exercise with jig choi, with straight punches, it should always be done together, and that way you're increasing the energy of the fist, and each time as you throw the punches out, each one is protecting the other. So it's a very important point. You don't want to be just it's like relaxed, and you don't want to be end up with one hand back, because it's by pulling back you're turning the spine, you're twisting the spine, and the energy comes from the spine, from your back, as your punch is coming from your back in effect, not from the fist. If you throw out the fist on its own, then all it is arm energy. It has nothing to do with your waist or your structure.
Sure.
And that's why we do it together.
Right.
Eventually, as a beginner, you may well be taught in single movements, because it's easier to perceive.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I think we should. I think we got to stop there, because the thing is with it, we can touch on some stuff, but it's very expansive without the aid of a video. medium to demonstrate stuff. It's hard, but I think what we've touched on there is just some of the what I think a lot of the common misinterpretations of it, or common ways of doing it.
It's simply our opinion.
100%.
People take it or leave it. They want to take it, understand it. Maybe they'll take another look at their set.
And
decide
absolutely.
for themselves whether or not that might help them. Let's hope. But if not, well, it's fine.
Well, listen, I think
we will have some videos out. Of it anyway.
100%.
We'll be doing some videos.
But don't go on YouTube and look for John Sow, because you won't find it, or you find people doing it, making a right hash of it. Which is a shame. Right. Just before we finish, I wanted to ask your opinion on something. Just before we go, because we've droned on for ages. I remember wooden dummies. We don't really use the wooden dummies a lot in Lau, and what I mean by that is some people do, right? Fine, but we don't have a form for a wooden dummy, for example, right? And I remember because I bought a wooden dummy and I used it for about a month, if that, and then I used it as a coat hanger, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ. But you've had some as well, haven't you? And I'm just wondering. I want to just talk about how useful wooden dummies are for training, because for me, I thought it was really useful, more of an arm conditioning exercise. Now, yes, you can. It's more useful a training equipment than a Makawara board, which is like what they do in karate, which is a plank of wood that they punch. And the only reason it's more useful is you've got four with the leg as well, 3 points at which you can make contact and develop shapes and just slowly bring your movements just that bit tighter if you want. But how useful do you think the wooden dummy is in this this one?
Yeah, I think the best use for the wooden dummy is in its you're forced to think about your front leg. So basically, moving from one side to the other when you're changing positions, placing your right foot forward, you will always learn to place it against your opponent's knee, because the knee or the base leg part of the wooden dummy represents obviously a leg, and so what you're doing basically is bringing your foot inwards, sweeping it inwards like an inner circle, and placing it against the knee,
just like the walk
as you continue to throw the punches,
just like the black sash walk that we do, isn't it? The black Jigma what's it, Jigma Tansao, or Jorma Nokjun.
Well, no, it's Jigma Tansao.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry, I always get my things mixed up. But essentially, you've got this an obstacle in your way. So, like you said, you're forced to be aware. Well,
you're preventing the person from kicking, and also like sticky hands, like Chisao, if you want. They're learning to place their foot in a position of domination, so that they can feel the person kick. Obviously there's no foot on it, so you can't put the foot around and trap the knee, but the idea is to feel the knee all the time, is to encourage you to feel the leg, so that you have control over the ability to kick, the person's ability to kick you, and obviously fight closer, which is what the idea is, to close up that gap. That's basically.
Do you know one of the things I always thought, like with wooden dummies, like when you go to, and there's a Wing Chun school near you, isn't there? And they've got a few wooden dummies in there. But
I think so.
No, I've seen the pictures. But if you've got a class of people, right, and they're all training on the wooden dummies, to me, my mind's going, hang on a minute, why don't you just get them training with each other? I mean, is that like
a lot of them?
I mean, am I out of I get it if you're doing a form, if you have to learn a form of the wooden dummy, which there is a Wing Chun form they do on the wooden dummy, fine. But if you're looking to train wooden dummy to improve your techniques in, say, sticking hands or close quarter fighting, why not train with another person? Or am I just out of order saying that?
I don't know. It's a possibility that they would be as frustrated as you and I when you have to train with a beginner to do pushing hands, because they cannot perceive the position that the hands then need to go into.
Right.
If you've got a bloody big wooden block sticking out and you put your arm against it, your arm is not going to go any further, so your arm is always going to land in the right place.
Yeah.
So using the wooden dummy as an exercise program like that, you eventually, I believe, probably would put your arms in the right place when it comes to training with another individual.
Yeah.
So it's helpful for that reason, and again, as I already noted, for the foot position.
Yeah.
So, but you know, when people come to fight, that becomes more of a personal ability.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just wondering, like, you know, I mean, it certainly looks very kung fu-y, but like I said, I had one for about a month and I'd never bloody used it again.
I had one, and it had car springs on the back, and, and I stuck it against the wall. I've got a picture of it with my wife when I first met her.
Yeah,
and she's leaning on it all seductively.
Oh, that's right. She's flashing a bit of leg, isn't she? She's got some high heels on.
Perhaps I should stick that on.
No, I just wanted to know your opinion on that. Yeah. Or memories, whichever one.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to know your opinion. Anyway, Steve, we better shut up and go, because we've droned on far too long. I mean, you know. Once again, guys, thank you so much for listening to us. And if you've got any questions at all, no matter where you are listening to this podcast, please send it in. And what I don't want you to think is that, you know, if you're training with an instructor or whatever, that we will, it's all we can do is give you a different version of events. We're not saying we're right, we're not saying we're wrong, we're just saying it's a different version of events. If you want another opinion,
I was going to say, I think it's important and pertinent to suggest that if you are listening to us, you're open to persuasion, or you're open to information, you're open to other opinions. So, you know, don't complain if we're different to what your instructor's saying. Yeah. Because you choose to listen. Yeah. So you either choose to listen because you want to argue our points and confirm your own, or you want to confirm our points and argue your own. But that's the way the life is. Absolutely. Isn't it?
And we are more than happy for you to argue with us, no problem, and it will be done with the utmost respect. Obviously, absolutely. Don't troll us, man.
Yeah, you know? Don't bother. We ain't going to answer no trolls. But it's bad enough having your own students as trolls.
Ooh, bitch. Right. Guys, thank you so much for joining us again on another episode of the Kung Fu Podcast. My name's James Still, and as ever, I'm joined by my teacher, Steve Newby, and we'll see you soon. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
My jam donut is getting bloody stale.
Oh, get it. You scoff it down. You got to say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I should have said it with my mouth full.
See you, gang. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I kick your little Beijing ass right now, man. I ain't scared of you. I know you know that little tricky shit. Come on.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also, guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So, until next time, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu Podcast.
Guns. Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it?
No guns.